My best friend had been sleeping with my wife for 8 months. My own mother knew for 4 of them. So I did what I do for a living. I audited everything quietly, methodically, down to the last detail, and then I disappeared completely. I'm a forensic accountant. I find things people try to hide. I trace money through shell companies and dummy accounts and offshore transfers. I read patterns in numbers the way other people read body language. You'd think that would make me harder to fool. It doesn't. It just means when the truth finally lands, you understand exactly how thoroughly you were played. The Thursday it started, I was at my desk around 3 p.m. when my phone buzzed, an American Express alert. A charge at a hotel in Midtown. 200 TDsm. My wife Faye had her own card on our joint account. She'd told me that morning she was driving up to see her sister in Westchester. The hotel was in Manhattan. I didn't call her. I didn't text. I went back to my screen and opened a browser on my work laptop, the one running through a VPN I'd set up myself, and I started working. By 5 p.m., I had everything. 3 months of hotel charges, always on days I was traveling or stuck in back-to-back off-site meetings. A loyalty account in Faye's email. Her password was the same one she'd used since college. I knew it, never had a reason to use it until now. Check-in times. Check-out times. One booking made from a number I recognized. My best friend Bo had called to request a late checkout and left his contact info. Bo, my best friend since 7th grade, best man at my wedding. Godfather to our dog because we thought it was funny at the time. I sat with that for about 20 minutes. Long enough to be sure, not long enough to fall apart. Then I kept digging. Because that's what I do. I found the group text by accident. Faye had an iPad on the kitchen counter she used for recipes and crosswords. She'd logged into iMessage on it, and never logged out. I'd known that for 2 years and never once thought about it. That night after I got home after dinner, after she went to take a bath, I picked up the iPad. The thread was labeled family stuff. 3 participants, Faye, Bo, and my mother. I read back 4 months. My mother had started the conversation. She'd texted Bo asking if he was doing okay with everything. He said it was hard but that he and Faye were being careful. My mother said she was proud of them for handling it maturely. She said she'd always thought they made more sense together. She hoped things would work out the way they were supposed to. Then there were updates. My mother asking how Faye was feeling. Bo sending her a photo from a weekend I was in Chicago for work. A restaurant. 2 wine glasses. Faye laughing at something off camera. My mother responding with a heart emoji. I put the iPad back exactly where I'd found it. Faye came out of the bathroom in her robe, hair up in a towel, and asked if I wanted to watch something. I said I was tired. I went to bed. I lay there in the dark while she watched TV in the living room. And I thought with total clarity about what was going to happen next. By the time she came to bed, I knew. I got up after she fell asleep, went to my home office, opened my laptop and made a list. I work in columns, problem action, timeline. When you're a forensic accountant you learn that panic is just noise. Panic makes you sloppy. Precision is what gets results. The list was 3 pages by 2 a.m. In the morning I went to work like nothing had changed. On my lunch break I walked to a law firm 6 blocks from the office. One I'd identified the night before. The kind that advertises in the Wall Street Journal and doesn't do free consultations. I paid the fee. Sat down with a senior partner. Told her what I had. She asked what I wanted. Everything I'm legally entitled to, I said. Nothing more, nothing less. And I want it fast. She pulled out a yellow legal pad. And started writing. Our apartment was in my name. I'd been paying the mortgage for a year before we got married, and never added Faye to the title. Our savings were split across joint and individual accounts. I'd been the higher earner for 3 of our 4 married years. There was a prenuptial agreement, nothing punishing, just sensible paperwork. 2 families with some assets had insisted on. The attorney laid out what the divorce would look like. I listened, asked 2 questions. Paid her retainer in full that afternoon. That evening I called my bank. Moved my half of the joint savings into my individual account. Called my firm's HR department the next morning. I'd been sitting on an approved transfer to the Denver office for almost a year. Something I kept putting off because Faye didn't want to leave New York. I told them I was ready to accept. Transfer effective in 30 days. I went home that night and made dinner. Faye asked about my day. I said it was busy. She talked about the traffic on her drive. I nodded. We watched something on television. I went to bed. I lived like that for 2 weeks. Not because I was wavering. Because I needed those 2 weeks to dismantle everything without giving her, or Bo, or my mother any warning. I've seen what happens when one party in a divorce panics and starts hiding assets. I wasn't going to create a reason for anyone to start moving things around. Over those 2 weeks I moved clothes and documents out a few things at a time. My grandfather's pocket watch. The file box with tax returns, my passport, my grandmother's engagement ring that I'd kept in a drawer and never given Faye, because something always felt slightly off about the moment. Turns out the moment was off, because I was fundamentally wrong about who she was. On a Friday morning I left for work with one bag already in my car. The divorce petition was filed electronically at 9:14 a.m. By the time Faye was served that afternoon, I was checked into a hotel across the city. My phone started lighting up immediately. I watched the screen, Faye, twice, then Bo, then my mother. I let them go to voicemail and opened my contacts. I went through the list the same way I go through a spreadsheet, line by line, no exceptions. Faye, Bo, my mother, my father, my aunt who would tell my mother anything she asked. 2 cousins I wasn't certain about but wasn't willing to trust. Block. 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 I called my carrier and changed my number. The rep asked if there was anything else she could help me with. I said no. And meant it. 4 people got the new number. My attorney, my HR contact, my direct supervisor, and Sean. A college friend who lived in Atlanta, ran a small construction business, and had no meaningful connection to anyone in my marriage. I called him, gave him the short version of what happened, and told him he was one of 4 people on the planet who could reach me. He didn't say much. He asked if I needed anything. I said I'd let him know. He said, "Whatever you need, I'm here." That was enough. The hotel was quiet. I worked from my room most days. My employer's relocation package covered temporary housing. HR didn't ask personal questions. The transfer was already approved. They just needed a date. I met with my attorney 3 times over those 2 weeks. She gave me updates in a tone I appreciated. Factual, sequential, no editorializing. The divorce was moving. Faye had retained counsel. Her attorney sent a letter requesting I reconsider the timeline. My attorney forwarded it and asked if I wanted to respond. I said no. She drafted a counter stating we were proceeding as filed. My last night in the city I deleted every social media account I had. LinkedIn was last. Not deactivated. Full account deletion, confirmed twice. Created a new one the next morning under a slightly different name format, professional only, nothing personal attached. New email address connected to nothing in my past. I drove to Denver on a Sunday, 14 hours. Podcast on for the first 6, then off. Just the road. Denver was cold in a way that felt clean. My new apartment was on the 14th floor of a building in Loudoun. Walking distance from the office, a gym's downstairs, a coffee shop on the corner that I started going to every morning by my second day. Because they made good espresso and nobody asked questions. I liked that nobody knew my name yet. I liked that I got to decide what the new version looked like. The team at the Denver office was professional and didn't pry. My supervisor said he'd heard good things from New York. I thanked him and got to work. The caseload leaned toward municipal contracts rather than financial institutions, but the mechanics were identical. Find what's hidden, document it, move to the next thing. I started seeing a therapist in week 3. Not because I was struggling, more because I'd watched colleagues come apart after hard personal events and not notice it happening until they were already a version of themselves they didn't recognize. She was direct and didn't add unnecessary noise. At our second session she said, "You're very controlled about all of this." I said, "I know." She asked if that worried me. I said, "Only if it stops working." It didn't stop working. My attorney called every Thursday. Faye's side was making arguments about earning history and marital contributions. My attorney was making arguments about the asset structure and the prenup. The prenup was holding. There would be a settlement conference in 6 weeks. On week 6, Sean called. "You want an update?" he asked, "or are you good without it?" I said I wanted it. She went back to her parents' place in Connecticut. Bo is still in the city. And they're not together. For what it's worth. Apparently whatever they had fell apart fast after you filed. Bo told someone from the old group that she'd led him on, that he thought it was heading somewhere serious and she backed off when it got real. He's been going out a lot. Heard he got passed over for a promotion. "Okay," I said. "That's all you've got?" "That's all I've got." He made a sound that wasn't quite a laugh. "Your mom's been calling around trying to find where you are. She called my parents. My mom didn't tell her anything because she didn't know anything but figured you should know." I appreciated it. I told Sean to thank his mother for me. The settlement conference was on a Tuesday. I joined by video from a Denver affiliate office. Faye's attorney presented 3 points. My attorney responded to each. The judge asked clarifying questions about the asset structure and the prenup. She settled in under 2 hours. I kept the apartment, which I'd already listed for sale. I retained all individual accounts. Faye received a lump sum consistent with the prenuptial formula. Fair, documented, unchallengeable. No alimony, no further contact required. I signed the final papers on a Thursday afternoon and closed the browser and went back to the municipal audit I'd been working on before the call. That night I walked 4 blocks to a steakhouse and had dinner alone at the bar. Good steak. Decent bourbon. The bartender asked if I was celebrating something. I said kind of. He refilled my glass and didn't push it. The apartment in New York sold 3 weeks later. I closed remotely. My share of the equity went into a brokerage account I'd opened in Denver. I looked at the number for a moment, thought about the last 4 years. Then closed the app and went to the gym. Sean called every month or so. He wasn't checking in on my emotional state. He just gave me information and let me do what I wanted with it. I found out Bo had left our old firm under what was described as mutually tense circumstances. I found out Faye had moved in with someone from her hometown within 3 months of our divorce finalizing. Which told me something about her I probably should have understood years earlier. I found out my mother had started telling people at her church that I'd had some kind of breakdown, which I thought was a creative reframe. None of it required anything from me. It was just weather. I got a new apartment in March. 2 bedrooms, exposed bricks, a real kitchen, instead of the galley compromise we'd had in New York. I bought furniture I actually liked. I adopted a dog from a rescue. A 3-year-old mutt, named Decker, who had no interest in being still and excellent instincts about people. I met Elise in April at a continuing education seminar for CPAs. She was presenting a section on international asset tracing. She was sharp and funny, and had no idea who I was or what I'd come from, which I considered a genuine feature. We got coffee after and talked for 2 hours about work and ended up talking about everything else. She'd grown up in Colorado. She described her family as loud and warm and reliably embarrassing in the best way. She asked about mine. I told her it was a longer conversation. She said we could have it another time. We had it on the 3rd date. I told her everything. The iPad, the hotel charges, the group text with my mother, the 2 weeks of methodical dismantling, the 14-hour drive west. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I'm sorry your mother did that. That part seems worse in some ways." "It was," I said. She nodded. She didn't try to reframe it or offer a generous interpretation, or suggest I consider their perspective. She accepted it as what it was and moved on. That, more than anything, was why I kept seeing her. I got promoted in June. Senior forensic manager, my own team. Client relationships I'd been building since I arrived. My supervisor said I'd been one of the smoothest transfers he'd managed. I thanked him and didn't explain that the smoothness was mostly because I had nothing pulling me backward. Sean called in August. He sounded different. Less casual. "Your mom had a health scare," he said. "She's okay, but it was serious enough to rattle people. Your dad's been asking around about where you are." I said I was sorry to hear she'd had a scare. I didn't ask for details. "That's all you've got?" "I've thought about it," I said. "I haven't changed my position." He was quiet for a moment. "I know, I just had to tell you. You understand?" I did. Sean was a good person doing what good people do, making sure you have the information, then stepping back. I appreciated it. I also wasn't going back. I kept a journal. Something I'd started in therapy and never stopped. Not emotional processing in the way people imagine. More like a place to think through problems in writing, rather than just in my head. One night that fall I wrote something I came back to a few times afterward. The instinct after betrayal is to want a scene. A confrontation. Raised voices. A table where you finally say everything they deserve to hear. But that's not consequence. That's a gift. Confrontation gives the people who hurt you your time, your pain, your presence. A reaction they can narrate to themselves as proof they still matter to you. I didn't give them that. My mother had 4 months to pick up the phone, before I found that group text. Bo had years. He could have walked away from whatever he and Faye were doing at any point and said nothing, and I never would have known, and we would still be friends. Faye had 4 years of marriage to be the person I thought she was. They each made choices in the direction that cost them the least in the moment. I made mine in the direction in the moment, and built something real on the other side of it. People frame going no contact as avoidance, as coldness. What it actually is precision. You've identified a variable that produces bad outcomes, you remove it from the equation. That's not emotional damage, that's math. And it works. Elise moved in with me in November. She brought her cat, who hated Decker, for 3 weeks, and then decided they were best friends. Which felt like a reasonable timeline for that relationship. Her family came for Thanksgiving. Her mother made 2 pies. Her father spent 40 minutes talking to me about the Broncos, with the particular energy of a lifelong disappointed fan who refuses to stop believing. Her brother pulled me aside to make sure I understood that Elise was the best person in the family, and I should act accordingly. I told him I was fully aware. It was everything she'd described, loud and warm and reliably embarrassing in the best way. I drove home that night thinking about how foreign it felt to be in her room where nothing required management. Where no one was performing for anyone else. Where I didn't have to read the subtext. I thought briefly about where my own family was, that night. What the table looked like, whether Bo had been invited now that things had settled into whatever they'd settled into. I checked whether the thought carried weight. It didn't. I proposed to Elise in June, on a trail in Rocky Mountain National Park at a spot she'd told me about from a camping trip with her brother, when they were teenagers. I hadn't planned anything elaborate. We'd stopped to eat the lunch we'd packed, sitting on a flat rock above a tree line, and I just said it. I want to build a life with you, the whole thing. Everything. She looked at me. Then she said, I was wondering when you were going to get there. She said yes. We sat on that rock for another hour. Her family's reaction, over speakerphone that night, was exactly what I expected and exactly what I wanted. Her mother cried the right kind of tears. Her father made a joke about updating his estate plan. Her brother announced he expected to be in the wedding party, in a tone that communicated this was not actually a request. After the calls, Elise asked, gently the way she always asked hard things, do you want to tell your family? I thought about it honestly. Not about whether to, that was settled, but about whether it still hurt the way it used to. I checked. It didn't. I have you, I said. That's what I have. She nodded. She understood it wasn't grief. It was just a fact about my life, the same as any other fact. Some people are in your life. Some people made the choice not to be. You live in the version of things that's actually true. Sean flew in from Atlanta for the ceremony. Small wedding, late April. Her family, a handful of friends I'd made in Denver. A few people from the office. No empty chairs, no explanations, no performance. Just people who wanted to be there. Elise wore a dress she'd found at a small boutique in Boulder, simple and exactly right. I wore a suit I'd bought for the occasion and actually liked. Her father walked her down the aisle. Her mother cried. Sean stood next to me and said nothing useful the entire ceremony, which was exactly what I needed from him. During the vows I looked at her family in the front row. All of them smiling. Not the careful, controlled smiling of people holding the peace. Just people who were happy to be in a room, together. I hadn't understood. It could feel that uncomplicated. Somewhere, in a house in Connecticut I'd never visited, a woman was probably still occasionally dialing a number that had been disconnected for 2 years. Telling the story of a son who non-disappeared, shaping the narrative version made her the least responsible for her part in it. Waiting for something that wasn't coming. I wasn't thinking about her. I was thinking about the woman next to me, saying my name in the middle of a sentence that was going to bind us to each other for the rest of our lives, and how quietly extraordinary it was to be chosen by someone who knew exactly who she was choosing. We signed the license. The room broke into noise. Her brother yelled something I couldn't make out. Decker, who Elise had insisted on including in the reception, knocked over a flower arrangement near the door. I built this. On the other side of the worst week of my life, in a city where no one knew the old version of me. Out of nothing but deliberate choices made one at a time. People call it a revenge story. It wasn't. Revenge is something you do to someone. This was something I did for myself. The only version of any of this that actually makes sense. The difference is everything.